Her wealthy CEO husband belittled her because she didn't have a lawyer. Then her father arrived. What he did left everyone in the court in shock. "You are nothing without me. Do you understand that? Nothing. You walked into this marriage with empty pockets and an empty resume, and you will crawl out of it the same way." Those were the words Marcus Ashford spoke to his wife on the night she asked for a divorce. The night she discovered he had been sleeping with other women since before they even said their vows. But here is what makes this story unlike anything you have ever heard. 6 months later, Vivian Cole stood alone in a courtroom, facing 4 of the most expensive lawyers money could buy. Her billionaire husband sat across the aisle, surrounded by his legal fortress, watching her with the kind of smile a cat gives a cornered mouse. She had no lawyer, no representation, no one standing beside her. And when his lead attorney stood up and announced to the entire courtroom that this poor woman clearly did not understand what she was walking into, when the gallery laughed at her supposed naivety, when Marcus leaned over and whispered something that made his entire legal team smirk, Vivian did something no one expected. She smiled. Because what Marcus Ashford did not know, what his 4 lawyers had failed to discover, what every single person in that courtroom was about to learn, was that Vivian Cole had been preparing for this moment for months, and her father was about to walk through those courtroom doors. Have you ever watched someone dig their own grave without realizing it? Have you ever seen arrogance so blind that it could not recognize the trap closing around it? Have you ever wanted to witness the exact moment when a man who thought he was untouchable discovered he had made the biggest mistake of his life? Stay with me, because what happens next is going to remind you why you should never ever underestimate someone just because you have made them feel small. If you believe in justice, if you love watching the powerful get exactly what they deserve, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell, because this story is going to leave you breathless. Let me take you back to the beginning. The courtroom doors of courtroom 7B opened at exactly 9 in the morning on a Tuesday that Vivian Cole would remember for the rest of her life. The chamber itself was designed to intimidate. Mahogany panels stretched from floor to ceiling. The judge's bench sat elevated like a throne. Everything about the space whispered that serious matters were decided here, that lives were changed within these walls, that justice was dispensed with the weight of tradition and authority. Vivian walked through those doors alone. She wore a simple navy dress that she had owned for years. No jewelry adorned her neck or wrists except for a single pearl earring that had belonged to her mother. Her hair was pulled back in a practical style. Her shoes were sensible, not designer. She carried a leather briefcase that had seen better days. Every detail of her appearance told a story, and every person in that courtroom was reading it wrong. The gallery was already filling when she entered. Society friends of Marcus occupied the front rows, dressed in clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. They watched Vivian with expressions ranging from pity to amusement. A few reporters sat near the back, notebooks ready, eager to document the dissolution of the Ashford marriage for the entertainment of their readers. Vivian walked to the respondent's table and set down her briefcase. She did not look at the faces watching her. She did not react to the whispers that followed her across the room. She simply arranged her papers with steady hands and waited. The petitioner's table told a different story entirely. Victor Brennan arrived first, silver hair swept back from a tanned face, Armani suit tailored to perfection. He was known in legal circles as the Shark, a man who had never lost a case he truly wanted to win. His hourly rate was rumored to be higher than what most families earned in a week. Behind him came 3 junior attorneys, each one carrying enough documentation to fill a small library. They moved with the synchronized efficiency of a military unit, arranging files and laptops and legal pads with practiced precision. And then Marcus Ashford entered. He was tall, dark hair with just enough silver at the temples to suggest distinguished maturity. He wore his wealth like a second skin, every detail of his appearance calculated to project power and success. At 42 years old, Marcus Ashford controlled a technology empire valued at over $2 billion. He sat on the boards of 3 major corporations. He had been featured on the cover of business magazines more times than he could count, and he looked at his wife across that courtroom with the expression of a man who had already won. The contrast was stark enough to make several people in the gallery shake their heads in secondhand embarrassment. 4 lawyers in designer suits versus 1 woman with a worn briefcase. A billion-dollar empire versus someone who, according to the prenuptial agreement Marcus's team would soon present, had entered the marriage with nothing of value. This was not a fair fight. Everyone could see that. Everyone was wrong. All rise. This court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Eleanor Hammond presiding. The bailiff's voice echoed through the chamber as everyone stood. Judge Hammond entered from her chambers and took her place at the bench. She was in her late 50s with sharp eyes that had witnessed thousands of cases and a reputation for fairness that even the wealthiest litigants could not buy. She surveyed the courtroom, her gaze lingering for just a moment on the disparity between the two tables. "You may be seated. This court is hearing the matter of Ashford versus Ashford, petition for dissolution of marriage. Are both parties present and ready to proceed?" Victor Brennan rose with the smooth confidence of a man who had delivered opening statements in rooms like this for 30 years. "The petitioner is present and ready, Your Honor. I am Victor Brennan of Brennan & Associates, lead counsel for Mr. Marcus Ashford. With me today are associates David Chen, Margaret Williams, and Thomas Reed." Judge Hammond nodded and turned her attention to the respondent's table. To the woman sitting there alone. "And the respondent?" Vivian stood. Her voice carried clearly across the courtroom, without tremor or hesitation. "Vivian Cole, Your Honor. I am present and ready to proceed." A ripple went through the gallery. Cole. She was using her maiden name. The message was clear. "I see you are representing yourself, Miss Cole." Judge Hammond's tone carried a note of concern. "Do you understand the complexity of these proceedings? Given the assets involved, the court can arrange for a continuance if you need time to secure legal representation." Before Vivian could respond, Victor Brennan cleared his throat. "Your Honor, if I may, we have repeatedly offered Miss Cole generous settlement terms that would have allowed her to retain counsel. She has refused every offer. At this point, we must proceed on the assumption that she either cannot afford representation or has chosen to waive her right to it." Marcus leaned over and whispered something to his lead attorney. Victor Brennan's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. At the petitioner's table, the junior attorneys exchanged glances that clearly communicated their belief that this case was already over. Vivian watched all of this with an expression that gave nothing away. "I appreciate the court's concern, Your Honor." She kept her voice level and professional. "But I am fully prepared to represent myself in these proceedings. I have reviewed all relevant documentation and filed the appropriate motions." "Very well." Judge Hammond made a note on her papers. "But I want to be clear that proceeding without counsel may put you at a significant disadvantage, particularly given the complexity of the assets involved." "I understand, Your Honor." Victor Brennan rose again, buttoning his jacket in a gesture that signaled he was ready to begin the demolition. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I would like to establish some context for these proceedings. Mr. Ashford is the founder and CEO of Ashford Holdings, a technology company currently valued at approximately $2.3 billion. He owns properties in 7 countries. His investment portfolio alone is worth more than most small corporations." He paused for effect, letting the numbers settle into the minds of everyone present. Miss Cole, by contrast, entered this marriage 4 years ago with limited assets. She was employed as a public defender earning a modest government salary. She had no significant savings, no family wealth to speak of. And shortly after the marriage, she voluntarily left her position to focus on, and I quote from her own statements, supporting her husband's career and managing their household. The implication dripped from every word: gold digger, social climber, a woman who had attached herself to a wealthy man and was now trying to extract whatever she could from the wreckage of their marriage. Vivian felt the familiar sting of those assumptions, the same sting she had felt for 4 years every time Marcus's family looked at her like she was something he had tracked in on his expensive shoes. But she did not react. She simply watched and waited. "In summary," Victor Brennan continued, "we have a situation where one party brought everything to this marriage, and the other party brought, respectfully, very little of tangible value. The prenuptial agreement Ms. Cole signed clearly reflects this reality." He pulled a document from his stack of papers and held it up. This agreement, signed by both parties 3 days before their wedding, clearly states that in the event of divorce, Ms. Cole would receive a one-time settlement of $200,000 and no claim to any of Mr. Ashford's business interests or properties acquired before or during the marriage. Judge Hammond accepted the document and reviewed it briefly. "And, Miss Cole, do you contest the validity of this prenuptial agreement?" "I do, Your Honor." Vivian's response was calm. "I have filed a motion challenging the agreement on grounds of duress, which I will address when appropriate." A flicker of surprise crossed Victor Brennan's face. He had expected tears by now. Panic. Perhaps a desperate plea for more time. Instead, he was facing a woman who seemed to know exactly what she was doing. "Duress?" Marcus's voice cut across the courtroom before his attorney could stop him. That is ridiculous. She signed it willingly, eagerly. She could not wait to become Mrs. Ashford. Mr. Ashford, Judge Hammond's voice carried a warning. Please direct your comments through your counsel. Marcus sat back, but not before shooting Vivian a look of pure contempt. A look that said this was all theater, that the outcome was predetermined, that she was wasting everyone's time by not simply accepting her defeat. If I may continue, Your Honor, Victor Brennan smoothly redirected. We would like to begin by establishing the extent of marital assets and Mr. Ashford's legitimate concerns about protecting his business interests from frivolous claims. He launched into a detailed presentation of Marcus's wealth, the properties, the investments, the company valuations, the art collection, the yacht, the private jet. Each item was presented not simply as an asset, but as evidence of Marcus's success and, by implication, Vivian's opportunism. Through it all, Vivian sat quietly, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. She did not interrupt. She did not object. She simply listened and recorded. And now, Mr. Ashford, Victor Brennan said, turning to his client with a sympathetic expression, could you please tell the court about the circumstances surrounding your decision to file for divorce? Marcus straightened his tie and assumed an expression of wounded dignity. This is difficult to discuss, he began, his voice carefully modulated, but I believe the court deserves to understand the full picture. He paused, as if gathering strength to continue. I gave Vivian everything. A beautiful home, financial security beyond anything she could have imagined in her previous life, access to society, culture, opportunities she never would have had otherwise. And in return, all I asked was that she be a supportive partner, that she help me build the life we both wanted. Another pause, longer this time. Instead, she became increasingly hostile, secretive. She questioned my business decisions despite having no expertise in corporate matters. She withdrew from our social obligations, embarrassing me in front of important clients and colleagues. And when I tried to address these issues, she accused me of controlling her. Vivian's pen stopped moving. She looked up at Marcus, and something flickered in her eyes. Pain, perhaps, or maybe recognition. The recognition of a woman hearing her own suffering rewritten as someone else's victimhood. I filed for divorce because I realized that Vivian was never truly invested in our marriage. Marcus delivered the final line with practiced sincerity. She was invested in what I could provide for her. And when she realized that I would not simply hand over my life's work, she became bitter and resentful. Thank you, Mr. Ashford. Victor Brennan nodded approvingly. Your Honor, I believe Mr. Ashford's testimony clearly establishes the nature of this relationship and supports our position that the prenuptial agreement should be enforced as written. Judge Hammond turned to Vivian. Miss Cole, do you wish to respond to Mr. Ashford's characterization of your marriage? Vivian rose slowly. She looked at Marcus for a long moment, and something in her expression made him shift uncomfortably in his seat. Your Honor, I will have quite a lot to say about the reality of our marriage when it is my turn to present. For now, I will simply note that Mr. Ashford's testimony contains several factual inaccuracies that I will address with documentation. Factual inaccuracies? Marcus's voice rose with indignation. What exactly are you accusing me of? I am not accusing you of anything, Marcus. Vivian's voice remained steady. I am stating that the record will show a different picture than the one you have painted. A very different picture. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. There was something in Vivian's tone, a quiet confidence that did not match the image of a woman who had been abandoned and outmatched. Victor Brennan sensed it too. He exchanged a glance with his junior attorneys, the kind of glance that said we should have looked deeper. But he pushed forward, because that is what lawyers like him did. They pushed forward, relying on the weight of their resources and reputation to crush any resistance. Your Honor, we have prepared extensive documentation of the marital assets in our proposed division. With the court's permission, I would like to begin presenting this evidence. Judge Hammond nodded. Proceed. What followed was a masterclass in legal theater. Victor Brennan presented chart after chart, document after document, building a picture of Marcus Ashford as a generous husband who had been taken advantage of by a scheming wife. Every asset was cataloged. Every expense Vivian had incurred during the marriage was presented as evidence of her profligate spending. The gallery watched with rapt attention. The reporters scribbled furiously, and Marcus sat back with the satisfied expression of a man watching his investment pay off. As you can see, Victor Brennan concluded, Miss Cole's lifestyle during this marriage was entirely funded by my client. Her charitable work, while admirable, was supported entirely by Ashford Holdings resources. Her social activities were conducted using Mr. Ashford's accounts. Even her personal expenses were managed through an allowance system that my client generously established. He turned to face Vivian directly. Without Mr. Ashford, Ms. Cole would have nothing. No income, no savings, no skills relevant to the current job market, given that she allowed her professional credentials to lapse during the marriage. Our position is simple. Ms. Cole should receive the settlement specified in the prenuptial agreement and nothing more. Your Honor. Vivian stood, and something in her posture had changed. A straightening of the spine, a squaring of the shoulders. If I may respond. You may. Mr. Brennan has presented an impressive amount of documentation regarding my husband's assets. However, I noticed several significant omissions in his presentation. Victor Brennan's smile faltered slightly. Omissions? Yes. For example, Mr. Brennan has not mentioned the charitable foundation I established and managed during our marriage, which generated substantial positive publicity and tax benefits for Ashford Holdings. He has not mentioned the business relationships I cultivated through what he dismissively calls social activities, relationships that directly resulted in 3 major contracts for my husband's company. And he certainly has not mentioned the circumstances under which I signed the prenuptial agreement. She reached into her worn briefcase and pulled out a folder. Your Honor, I would like to submit documentation showing that I was presented with the prenuptial agreement less than 12 hours before our wedding ceremony, without independent legal counsel, and was explicitly told by Mr. Ashford's representatives that the wedding would not proceed if I did not sign immediately. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Hammond called for order. That is a lie. Marcus was on his feet, his composure finally cracking. She knew exactly what she was signing. She was happy to sign it. Mr. Ashford. Judge Hammond's voice cut through the chaos. You will contain yourself, or I will hold you in contempt. Sit down. Marcus sat, but his face was flushed with anger. Ms. Cole, Judge Hammond continued, do you have evidence to support this claim of duress? I do, Your Honor. I have emails between Mr. Ashford's legal team from the day before our wedding, discussing, and I quote, ensuring the subject signs before she has time to consult independent counsel. I also have testimony from the wedding planner who was present when I was given the document, who will confirm that I was crying and clearly distressed when I signed. Victor Brennan rose quickly. Your Honor, we have not been provided with any of this supposed evidence through proper discovery channels. That is because I only recently obtained these documents. Vivian's voice carried a hint of steel. From Mr. Ashford's own private server. Marcus went pale. How did you access my private server? I did not access anything, Marcus. Vivian met his eyes. Your IT department provided me with complete access during our marriage. You apparently forgot to revoke it when you filed for divorce. The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Hammond reviewed the documents Vivian had submitted, her expression increasingly serious. Mr. Brennan, were you aware of these communications? Victor Brennan hesitated, and in that hesitation, everything changed. I was not personally involved in the prenuptial negotiations, Your Honor. That was handled by a different department within my firm. A different department within his firm. In other words, he was now trying to distance himself from potential misconduct. This is exactly what happens when you underestimate someone. When you are so certain of your own superiority that you do not bother to cover your tracks. When you assume that the person you have spent years diminishing could not possibly have the intelligence or resources to fight back. Marcus Ashford was learning this lesson in real time, and he did not like it at all. Your Honor, Marcus's voice had lost its smooth confidence. My ex-wife, is clearly confused about the nature of these documents. I am sure there is a reasonable explanation. Then I suggest your legal team find that explanation before this hearing continues. Judge Hammond's tone made it clear she was not amused. We will take a 15-minute recess. When we return, I expect both parties to be prepared to address these new developments. As the judge left the bench, the courtroom exploded in conversation. Reporters were already on their phones. The society friends who had come to watch Vivian's humiliation were looking decidedly less comfortable, and Marcus Ashford was huddled with his legal team, his face a mask of fury. Vivian remained at her table, organizing her documents with the same calm efficiency she had displayed throughout. She did not gloat. She did not even smile. But there was something in her eyes that had not been there before. Hope. Now I need to tell you something important. What you have just witnessed was only the beginning. Vivian had more evidence. Much more. Evidence of affairs. Evidence of financial manipulation. Evidence of psychological abuse that would make your stomach turn. But even with all of that, she was still one woman against $1 billion empire. She was still facing 4 of the most expensive lawyers in the country. She was still technically representing herself against a legal team that had been preparing for this case for months. The odds were still against her. What she needed was someone who could match Victor Brennan blow for blow. Someone whose reputation alone would change the dynamics of this entire proceeding. Someone who could take her evidence and present it in a way that would leave Marcus Ashford with nowhere to hide. She needed her father. But let me take you back first. Let me show you who Vivian Cole was before Marcus Ashford ever entered her life. Because you cannot truly understand what happened in that courtroom unless you understand who she was when he found her, how he systematically destroyed her, and why she had every right to destroy him in return. 6 years before the divorce proceedings, Vivian Cole stood in a different courtroom entirely. She was 28 years old. Her hair was pulled back in the same practical style, but her eyes burned with a fire that 6 years of marriage would nearly extinguish. She wore a suit that was professional but not expensive, purchased on a public defender's salary that barely covered her student loans. And she was magnificent, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Her voice filled the courtroom without shouting. Every word was measured, deliberate, designed to reach not just the ears but the hearts of the 12 people who would decide her client's fate. The prosecution wants you to believe that Michael Torres is a thief. They have shown you security footage. They have presented testimony from store employees. They have built what appears to be an airtight case. She paused, letting the silence work. But what they have not shown you is this. She held up a document. The employment records proving that Michael was at work during the time the theft allegedly occurred. They have not called the supervisor who will testify that Michael clocked in at 3:45 p.m. and did not leave until his shift ended, at midnight. And they certainly have not explained why the man in that grainy security footage, who the prosecution claims is my client, is wearing a wedding ring on his left hand. She turned to face the defendant, a young man barely out of his teens, who sat with his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Michael Torres has never been married. He does not own a wedding ring, because the man in that footage is not Michael Torres. The prosecution has built their entire case on a resemblance and a desire to close a file. The closing argument went on for another 20 minutes, but the verdict was decided in those first moments. Not guilty. A young man who would have spent years in prison for a crime he did not commit walked free because a public defender who earned less than the security guards outside the building had bothered to actually investigate the case. That was who Vivian Cole was. She was the lawyer other public defenders came to when they had impossible cases. She was the one who stayed late reviewing evidence while her colleagues went home. She was the one who believed, with every fiber of her being, that justice should not be a luxury item available only to those who could afford it. Her colleagues called her the Crusader. Her supervisors called her a problem because she cared too much, worked too hard, made them all look bad by comparison. The families of her clients called her an angel. Her father called her his greatest achievement. Raymond Cole had spent 40 years in the law. He had argued before the United States Supreme Court 17 times and won 15 of those cases. He had served on the state Supreme Court for 12 years, retiring only when his wife's health required his full attention. His textbook on constitutional law was required reading at every major law school in the country, and every day of his career, he had tried to instill in his daughter the same values that drove him, that the law was not a tool for the powerful to wield against the powerless, that a lawyer's highest calling was to give voice to those who had been silenced, that justice delayed was justice denied. Vivian had internalized those lessons completely. "Dad," she had said during one of their regular Sunday dinners, "I had a case today. Kid accused of stealing from an electronics store, but the timeline did not work. The witnesses were unreliable, and the prosecutor did not care because he just wanted to clear his backlog." Raymond Cole had listened with the focused attention he gave to everything his daughter said. "What did you do?" "I filed motion after motion until they had to actually look at the evidence. Took 2 months of fighting, but we got the charges dismissed." Raymond had smiled, the kind of smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "That is my girl. Never let them tell you that the case is too small or the defendant too unimportant. Justice is not about efficiency. It is about truth." These dinners had been the highlight of Vivian's week. Her mother would cook too much food. Her father would ask about her cases. They would argue about legal precedents and debate constitutional interpretations as if they were discussing the weather. It was a happy life, a meaningful life, a life where Vivian knew exactly who she was and what she stood for. And then she met Marcus Ashford. The introduction happened at a charity gala, one of those events where people in expensive clothes congratulated themselves on their generosity, while waiters in cheap uniforms served them champagne. Vivian was there because the public defender's office had been given a table as a token gesture toward diversity. She was the only person from her office who had agreed to attend. "I noticed you from across the room." The voice came from her left. She turned to find herself face to face with one of the most attractive men she had ever seen. Dark hair, perfectly styled, a suit that probably cost more than her car, and eyes that seemed to look at her as if she was the only person at the entire event. "That is quite a line." Vivian kept her voice dry. "Does it usually work?" He laughed, and the sound was genuine, not the polished chuckle of someone performing charm. "Honestly, I do not know. I do not usually approach strangers at these things. But I saw you during the presentation earlier. You work for the public defender's office? Guilty as charged." Another laugh. "You know, I watched a trial last month. I was there for a company matter, boring licensing dispute. But there was another case being heard in the next courtroom, and I stepped in to watch for a few minutes. A public defender was giving the most passionate closing argument I had ever heard. She talked about justice and truth and the purpose of the law like she actually believed it." He paused, and there was something in his expression that seemed almost vulnerable. "I looked her up afterward. Vivian Cole. Won that case despite everyone saying it was unwinnable. I donated to the public defender's office that afternoon." Vivian felt something shift in her chest, a small flutter that she would later recognize as the beginning of the end. "That was my case. I know." He smiled. "That is why I walked over here. I wanted to meet the woman who reminded me why I used to believe in the legal system. It was perfect. Too perfect, she would realize later. The way he had researched her. The way he had positioned himself as an admirer rather than a pursuer. The way he had appealed to her values rather than her vanity. But in the moment, all she saw was a handsome man who seemed genuinely interested in who she was rather than what she could do for him. The courtship that followed was everything Vivian had never experienced. Flowers delivered to her office, dinners at restaurants she could never have afforded, long conversations about justice and fairness and how the world should work. Marcus presented himself as a businessman with a conscience, someone who wanted to use his wealth to make a difference. He took her to galas where she met senators and CEOs. He introduced her to a world of influence and power that seemed like it could be harnessed for good. He made her feel special, seen, valued in ways that went beyond her work. And slowly, gradually, he began to suggest that she was wasting herself. "You work so hard." He said it over dinner one night, about 3 months into their relationship. 60-hour weeks, cases that pay you nothing. And for what? The system chews up people like you and spits them out. It is meaningful work, Marcus. I know it is. I am not saying it is not. But imagine if you had real resources. Imagine if you could fund an entire legal aid organization instead of handling cases one at a time. Imagine the difference you could make with actual power behind you. It sounded so reasonable, so supportive, as if he was thinking about her needs, her goals, her dreams. The proposal came 6 months later. A private beach at sunset, a ring that probably cost more than her yearly salary, and promises, so many promises, about the life they would build together. "Marry me, Vivian. Let me give you the world." She said yes. Her father had concerns. He expressed them carefully during one of their Sunday dinners, just weeks before the wedding. "He moves fast," Raymond had said, choosing his words with the precision that had served him in 1,000 courtrooms. 6 months is not a long time to know someone, especially someone from such a different world. "I know it seems fast, Dad, but when it is right, you just know." Raymond had nodded slowly. "I felt the same way about your mother. But Vivian, I have seen men like Marcus Ashford in my courtrooms. The charm, the confidence, the way everything seems to revolve around them. Sometimes that energy comes from genuine greatness, and sometimes it comes from something else entirely. He is not like that. I hope you are right, sweetheart. But promise me something. If anything ever makes you uncomfortable, if anything ever feels wrong, you will tell me. You will let me help." Vivian had promised. And then she had gotten swept up in wedding preparations and the excitement of starting a new life, and she had pushed her father's concerns to the back of her mind. The prenuptial agreement arrived 3 days before the wedding. She remembered the moment exactly. She was in the bridal suite of the hotel where the ceremony would take place, surrounded by her bridesmaids, when a man in a suit knocked on the door and handed her a thick envelope. "What is this?" "Prenuptial agreement." He did not even introduce himself. "Mr. Ashford asked me to have you sign before the ceremony." Vivian stared at the document. It was 43 pages long. The language was dense, technical, designed to obscure as much as it revealed. She was a lawyer. She knew she should read every word. She knew she should consult with someone before signing anything. But there was something in the man's tone, the way he stood there waiting, the implication that this was a formality that only an unreasonable person would question. "I need time to review this. The ceremony is in 3 days, Ms. Cole." Mr. Ashford was very clear that this needs to be signed before then. Otherwise, well, he shrugged. "I am sure you understand." "What does that mean?" "It means that Mr. Ashford's family has certain expectations, certain protections they require before welcoming someone new into the fold." Vivian felt her stomach drop. "Are you saying the wedding will not happen if I do not sign this?" "I am saying that Mr. Ashford has responsibilities to his family and his business." The man's voice was completely neutral. "I am sure you would not want to put him in an impossible position." Looking back, Vivian would recognize this moment as the first test, the first opportunity to see what she was really marrying. A man who sent a lawyer to pressure his fiancée into signing away her rights 3 days before their wedding, while she was surrounded by people who had traveled from across the country to celebrate their love. She should have called her father. She should have walked away. She should have recognized the red flag for what it was. But she was in love, and she was embarrassed, and part of her was afraid that maybe Marcus's family was right to want protections, that maybe she was not good enough for their world, that maybe signing was the price of admission to the life she was being offered. She signed, and just like that, Vivian Cole signed away her future. The marriage started well enough, or at least that is how Vivian would describe it to herself later, when she was trying to understand how she had ended up so lost. The first year was filled with adjustments, moving into Marcus's penthouse, learning the rhythms of his world, meeting his friends, his family, his business associates, becoming Mrs. Ashford. "You do not need to keep working." Marcus said it casually, about 3 months into the marriage. "You are exhausted all the time. The public defender's office is taking advantage of you." "I love my work, Marcus. I know you do. But think about it. You could focus on our life together. You could get involved in philanthropy in a real way, not just scraping by on a government salary. You could make a bigger difference." It sounded so reasonable. Again, and Vivian was exhausted. The hours at the public defender's office had not decreased just because she was married. If anything, the contrast between her work life and her home life had become more stark. 60-hour weeks in a cramped office, then coming home to a penthouse with fresh flowers and a housekeeper who had prepared dinner. Maybe you were right. That was the moment everything started to unravel. Once Vivian stopped working, her world began to shrink. Her colleagues from the public defender's office drifted away. Their lives too different from hers to maintain easy friendship. Her new social circle consisted of Marcus's friends, people who viewed her with barely concealed suspicion because she had not grown up in their world. And Marcus himself began to change. Or rather, Marcus began to reveal who he had always been. The first cutting remark came about 6 months after she left her job. "Did you really wear that to the Hendersons' party?" He said it lightly, almost teasingly, but there was an edge underneath. "What is wrong with it?" "Nothing. If you want to look like a secretary playing dress up." He laughed, as if it was a joke. "I just think maybe we should get you some new things. Let me take care of it." He took care of it. He took care of everything. And slowly, Vivian realized that taking care of meant taking control. Her wardrobe was selected by his stylist. Her schedule was managed by his assistant. Her social engagements were approved or rejected based on his needs. "I'm just trying to help you fit in," he would say it whenever she pushed back. "You are not used to this world. Let me guide you." She tried to maintain her independence. She started a charitable foundation focused on legal aid for low-income families, using her connections from her public defender days to build something meaningful. "Is that really a good use of your time?" Marcus asked when she told him about the project. "It is important to me." He sighed. the long-suffering sigh of a man dealing with a wife who did not understand practical matters. Fine, but at least make sure it is branded properly. It should generate positive attention for the company, not just drain resources. Even her attempt to do good was co-opted into his corporate image. And then came the verbal abuse. It started small. Comments about her intelligence, suggestions that she did not understand complex issues, dismissive gestures when she offered opinions. It escalated gradually. "You really do not understand business, do you, darling?" He said it at a dinner party in front of 6 other couples. Vivian thought she should question our expansion into the Asian market, as if her degree in public interest law prepared her for international commerce. The table laughed. Marcus smiled, and Vivian felt something inside her wither. "I was asking because the communities we are displacing have no legal representation," she said quietly. "This is why I handle the finances. You are too soft, too idealistic." Marcus patted her hand condescendingly. "That is charming in a wife, but useless in the real world." Charming, like a pet, like a decoration. The pattern continued for years. Every attempt Vivian made to assert herself was met with dismissal, derision, or outright cruelty. She stopped offering opinions at dinner parties. She stopped questioning his business decisions. She stopped believing that her voice mattered. And through it all, Marcus maintained the fiction of a perfect marriage, the public displays of affection, the expensive gifts after particularly vicious arguments, the assurances that he loved her, that he only wanted what was best for her, that she would understand if she just trusted him. Do you know what happens to someone who spends years being told they are worthless? They start to believe it. They forget who they used to be. They become a shadow of the person they were before the diminishing began. Vivian Cole, the crusader, the woman who had defended the defenseless with fire and passion, became a ghost in her own life, until the night she discovered the affairs. It was their 3rd anniversary. Marcus was on a business trip, or so he had said. Vivian was home alone, as she often was, when she noticed that Marcus had left his personal tablet on his desk. She was not looking for evidence. She was looking for the restaurant reservation he had mentioned, trying to surprise him by confirming the details. What she found instead was a credit card statement linked to an account she did not recognize. Hotel suites in cities where Marcus claimed to have business meetings. Jewelry purchases that did not match anything he had ever given her. Restaurant charges for intimate dinners on nights when he had said he was working late. She followed the trail, and the more she followed, the more she found. The affairs had started before their wedding. Multiple women, all of them from appropriate families. All of them potential replacements if Vivian did not work out. She was not just being betrayed, she was being backstopped. When Marcus returned from his trip, Vivian was waiting for him in the living room, the evidence spread across the coffee table. "What is this?" His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, calculation, and then, most chillingly, amusement. "Oh, Vivian, you found my private accounts. Found your affairs, you mean?" He poured himself a drink, moving with the casual confidence of a man who did not expect consequences. "Did you really think a man like me would be satisfied with just one woman?" He sipped his scotch. "Especially one who brings so little to the table? So little? I gave up everything for you. My career, my independence, my entire identity. You gave up a mediocre career defending nobodies. I gave you diamonds and a mansion. I would say I got the short end of that deal." The words landed like blows. But for the first time in years, Vivian felt something other than defeat. She felt anger. "I want a divorce." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. "Fine, divorce it is. But understand this, you will get nothing. I will bury you in legal fees. I will drag this out until you are begging on the street. You walked into this marriage with nothing, and you will walk out the same way." He paused, swirling his drink. "Unless, of course, you can afford a lawyer who can go up against mine, and we both know you cannot." That night, alone in the guest bedroom of a mansion that had never felt like home, Vivian Cole made a decision. She was done being underestimated. If you are feeling angry on Vivian's behalf right now, good. You should be. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in her situation. Would you have left earlier? Would you have fought back sooner? Or do you understand, as I do, that escaping someone who has spent years making you feel small is one of the hardest things a person can do? And if this story is resonating with you, if you want to see what happens when Vivian finally fights back, make sure you are subscribed, because what her father does in that courtroom is going to change everything. Now let me tell you about the 6 months between that night and the courtroom. Because Vivian Cole did not just sit there waiting to be destroyed. She prepared, quietly, methodically, with the same attention to detail that had once made her the best public defender in the city. The first thing she did was document everything. Every email Marcus had ever sent her, every text message, every financial statement she could access. She saved copies in multiple locations, cloud storage under fake names, USB, drives hidden in places Marcus would never think to look, physical copies locked in a safety deposit box. She researched his business practices, the development project that was displacing low-income families. She dug until she found the regulatory violations he had buried, the tax structures that bordered on fraud. She mapped every shell company, every offshore account, every creative interpretation of the law. And she studied. Her law license had lapsed, but that did not mean she had forgotten how to be a lawyer. She spent her nights reviewing case law, refreshing her knowledge of divorce proceedings, understanding exactly what she would need to prove in order to challenge the prenuptial agreement. She never gave any indication that she was preparing for war. As far as Marcus knew, she was still the broken woman who had discovered his affairs and retreated into silence. He saw her at breakfast, pale and quiet. He saw her at the occasional dinner party, performing her role as Mrs. Ashford with empty eyes. He never saw the woman who stayed up until 3 a.m, building the case that would destroy him. About 4 months into her preparation, Vivian finally called her father. Conversation was difficult. Raymond Cole had watched his daughter disappear into a marriage that worried him, had seen her transform from the crusader into someone he barely recognized. He had wanted to intervene, but Vivian had pushed him away, ashamed of what she had become. "Dad," her voice cracked when he answered. "I need help. Tell me everything." So she did. The prenuptial signed under duress, the years of psychological abuse, the affairs, the threats, and the case she had been building, alone, for 4 months. When she finished, there was a long silence on the line. "Why did you wait so long to call me?" Raymond's voice was rough with emotion. "Because I was ashamed. Because I let him make me forget who I was. Because I did not want you to see what I had become. I see my daughter, who has been fighting a battle alone for 4 years, and I see a case that is going to make that man wish he had never met you." They spent the next 2 months refining her strategy. Raymond reviewed every document she had gathered. He identified the weaknesses in Marcus's legal position. He helped her understand how to present her evidence in the most devastating way possible. But they agreed on one crucial thing. Vivian would represent herself initially. She would let Marcus and his legal team believe they had already won. She would let them expose themselves, let their arrogance lead them into mistakes. And when the moment was right, Raymond would appear. "Let him underestimate you." Her father had said it during their final strategy session. "Let him think you are helpless. And when he least expects it, we will show him exactly who he married." That brings us back to the courtroom. Back to the 15-minute recess that Judge Hammond had called after Vivian's revelation about the prenuptial agreement. Marcus was huddled with his legal team in a conference room down the hall. Through the closed door, Vivian could hear raised voices. Victor Brennan's smooth confidence was nowhere to be found now. She sat at the respondents' table, organizing her documents, watching the clock. 3 minutes until the recess ended. 2 minutes. 1 minute. The bailiff called for everyone to return to their seats. Judge Hammond entered from her chambers. And then the courtroom doors opened one more time. He walked in like he owned the place. Because in a way, he did. Every law school in the country taught his cases. Every lawyer in that room had studied his writings. His career had reshaped American jurisprudence in ways that still echoed through courtrooms across the nation. Raymond Cole was wearing a simple gray suit. He carried a leather briefcase that was older than most of the attorneys in the room. His silver hair was swept back from a face that had seen 40 years of legal battles. And he walked directly to the respondents' table, where his daughter sat alone. "I apologize for being late, sweetheart." His voice was quiet, meant only for her. Traffic from the airport was worse than I expected. Vivian's eyes softened. "You did not have to come, Dad." "Of course I did." He turned to face Judge Hammond, and something in the room shifted. The spectators who had been watching with amusement were suddenly sitting straighter. The reporters who had been drafting headlines about Vivian's humiliation were erasing their notes. And at the petitioner's table, Victor Brennan had gone completely pale. "Your Honor, Raymond's voice carried the authority of a man who had addressed the Supreme Court 17 times. "If the court will permit, I would like to enter my appearance as CO counsel for the respondent." Judge Hammond leaned forward, and there was recognition in her eyes. "And you are?" "Raymond Cole, Your Honor. I believe we met briefly at the Federal Judiciary Conference last year." The silence that followed was absolute. Raymond Cole. The name went through the gallery like a shockwave. The junior attorneys at Marcus's table were staring at their boss, waiting for guidance. Victor Brennan had lost all color in his face, and Marcus Ashford sat frozen in his chair, staring at the man who had just entered the courtroom, trying to understand what was happening. "You," his voice cracked. "You are her father?" Raymond turned slowly to face his daughter's ex-husband. His expression was pleasant, almost gentle, like a master chess player watching an opponent realize they had already lost. "I am, and I have been reviewing your legal team's filings with great interest, Mr. Ashford, particularly the ones regarding asset classification and the prenuptial agreement you claim my daughter signed. This is it. This is the moment everything changes. I am going to pause here because I need you to understand the significance of what just happened. For 4 years, Marcus Ashford had told Vivian that she was nothing without him, that she came from nothing, brought nothing, was nothing. He had dismissed her family as beneath his notice, her background as insignificant, her entire existence before him as irrelevant. And now he was discovering that the woman he had married, the woman he had systematically destroyed, the woman he thought had no one in her corner, was the daughter of one of the most legendary legal minds in American history. Every insult he had ever made about her common background, every joke about her public defender's salary, every dismissive comment about her family, all of it was echoing through the courtroom now, taking on new meaning. Victor Brennan attempted to recover. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We had no notice that opposing counsel would be bringing in additional representation." Raymond turned to face his colleague with an expression of mild amusement. "Counselor Brennan, you have spent the last hour publicly humiliating my daughter for being unrepresented." He said it calmly, conversationally, as if they were discussing the weather. "I would think you would welcome a fair fight." The words hung in the air. Victor Brennan had no response. "Now," Raymond opened his leather briefcase with the calm efficiency of a man who had done this 10,000 times before. "I believe we were discussing the prenuptial agreement. What happens next is something no one in that courtroom will ever forget, and I am going to tell you all about it." Raymond Cole set his briefcase on the respondent's table and withdrew a single folder. The leather was worn soft from years of use. The folder itself was unremarkable, but the way he held it, the deliberate care with which he placed it before him, made everyone in the courtroom lean forward. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I would like to address some procedural matters." Judge Hammond nodded. "Go ahead, Mr. Cole. First, I want to acknowledge the impressive presentation Mr. Brennan has made regarding Mr. Ashford's assets. The charts were very thorough. The documentation was extensive. The implication that my daughter entered this marriage as some kind of fortune hunter was subtle but unmistakable." Victor Brennan shifted in his seat. "Your Honor, I must object to this characterization of our presentation." Raymond held up a hand. "I am not objecting, Counselor. I am complimenting you. It takes real skill to paint a woman who gave up her entire career for a man as a gold digger. You almost made me believe it." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter went through the gallery. Judge Hammond suppressed what might have been a smile. "However," Raymond's voice hardened slightly, "I believe it is time to present a more complete picture of this marriage. Starting with the prenuptial agreement." He opened his folder and withdrew a stack of documents. "Your Honor, I am submitting Exhibit A through D. These are email communications between members of Mr. Ashford's legal team in the 72 hours before my daughter's wedding." Victor Brennan was on his feet immediately. "Your Honor, we have not had an opportunity to review these documents through proper discovery channels. That is because these documents were only recently obtained." Raymond's voice remained calm. "From Mr. Ashford's own private server, to which my daughter retained access throughout the marriage and beyond." Marcus leaned toward his attorney and whispered furiously. Victor Brennan's face suggested he was receiving instructions he did not want to follow. "These emails," Raymond continued, "document a deliberate strategy to ensure my daughter signed the prenuptial agreement without independent legal review. I quote from an email dated 3 days before the wedding. Ensure the subject signs before she has time to consult independent counsel. Create a time pressure situation that prevents reconsideration." He looked up from the document. The subject, That is how Mr. Ashford's legal team referred to the woman he claimed to love, the woman he was about to marry. The subject. Your Honor, these emails are taken out of context. Victor Brennan's objection lacked its earlier confidence. Then please, by all means, provide the context. Raymond gestured toward the petitioner's table. Explain to the court why your colleagues were discussing strategy for pressuring a bride to sign legal documents hours before her wedding. Silence. I thought not. Raymond turned back to the judge. Your Honor, under established precedent, a prenuptial agreement signed under duress is voidable. The evidence I am presenting demonstrates clear and documented duress. My daughter was given 43 pages of complex legal language less than 12 hours before her wedding, and told explicitly that the ceremony would not proceed unless she signed. He paused, letting the words settle. She was 28 years old. She was in love, and she was told that everything she had planned, everything she had dreamed of, would disappear unless she gave up her rights without question. That is not consent, Your Honor. That is coercion. Judge Hammond reviewed the documents for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable, but something in the set of her jaw suggested she did not like what she was seeing. Mr. Brennan, do you have a response to these allegations? Victor Brennan stood slowly. He had argued cases in front of the Supreme Court. He had defended corporations against billion-dollar lawsuits. He had never looked as uncomfortable as he did in this moment. Your Honor, the circumstances of the prenuptial signing were handled by a different department within our firm. I was not personally involved in those negotiations. Raymond's eyebrows rose slightly. A different department. How convenient. So when things go wrong, you simply disclaim responsibility. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said, Counselor. Raymond's voice carried the weight of 4 decades of legal experience. You are attempting to distance yourself from potential misconduct by your colleagues while simultaneously defending the validity of the agreement they procured through that misconduct. He turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I move that the prenuptial agreement be declared void on grounds of duress. The documentation clearly establishes that my daughter was not given adequate time or opportunity to consult independent counsel, that she was explicitly threatened with cancellation of the wedding if she did not sign, and that this pressure was applied deliberately and strategically by Mr. Ashford's legal representatives. Judge Hammond made a note on her papers. I am inclined to give serious weight to this evidence, Mr. Cole. However, I will reserve final judgment on the prenuptial agreement until I have reviewed all relevant documentation. Please continue. Thank you, Your Honor. Raymond withdrew another folder from his briefcase. Now, let us discuss what my daughter actually contributed to this marriage. For the next 20 minutes, Raymond Cole systematically dismantled every claim Victor Brennan had made about Vivian's role in the Ashford household. The charitable foundation she established. According to Mr. Brennan, this was merely hobby work, a distraction that drained resources without providing meaningful return. Raymond placed a thick document on the judge's bench. This is a financial analysis of the Ashford Foundation's activities during the 4 years my daughter managed it. Total documented value generated for Ashford Holdings through tax benefits, positive publicity, and facilitated business relationships. $47 million. $47 million. Victor Brennan's voice was sharp with disbelief. That is a gross exaggeration. Is it? Raymond withdrew another document. Here is the internal Ashford Holdings memo, dated 18 months ago, discussing the foundation's impact on corporate image. I quote, "The foundation has been instrumental in securing the Morrison contract, the Pacific Rim expansion approval, and the resolution of the Henderson lawsuit. Estimated value to the company, minimum $50 million over 5 years." He looked at Marcus. This memo was written by your own chief financial officer, Mr. Ashford. Are you suggesting he was exaggerating? Marcus said nothing. His face had gone from pale to flushed to something approaching purple. What about the social obligations my daughter performed? The dinner parties? The galas? The networking events that Mr. Brennan dismissed as playing hostess? Raymond produced another folder. I have here a list of every business contact my daughter cultivated during her marriage. Next to each name is the resulting business relationship and its documented value to Ashford Holdings. The Morrison Industries deal, initiated at a dinner party my daughter organized. The Chen investment, group partnership, resulted from a conversation my daughter had at a charity gala. The resolution of the Henderson lawsuit, facilitated by a social introduction my daughter arranged. He spread the documents across the judge's bench. Total value of business generated through my daughter's social work, as documented by Ashford Holdings' own internal records, over $200 million across 4 years. The courtroom was completely silent, but according to Mr. Ashford, Vivian brought nothing to this marriage. According to his legal team, she was simply a gold digger who contributed nothing of value. According to the prenuptial agreement, she deserves $200,000. Raymond's voice dropped. $200,000 for a woman who generated $200 million. Your Honor, this is absurd. Victor Brennan was on his feet again, but his objection lacked conviction. These numbers are speculation. Correlation is not causation. My client's business success cannot be attributed to dinner party conversations. Raymond turned to face his opponent. Then let us discuss something that is not speculation, counselor. Let us discuss documented facts. He withdrew another folder. This one was thicker than the others. Your Honor, I would now like to address the circumstances of this marriage beyond the financial contributions. I would like to discuss the pattern of psychological manipulation and emotional abuse that my daughter endured for 4 years. Marcus shot to his feet. This is ridiculous. I never laid a hand on her. Sit down, Mr. Ashford. Judge Hammond's voice was ice. You will have your opportunity to respond. Marcus sat, but his hands were shaking. Physical abuse is not the only form of abuse, Mr. Ashford. Raymond's voice was calm, almost gentle, and the record suggests that what you did to my daughter was far more insidious than physical violence. He began reading from the documents. Text message from Mr. Ashford to my daughter, dated 14 months into the marriage. You embarrassed me at the Henderson dinner. Your opinions on business make you look stupid. Keep your mouth shut at these events or do not attend. Another text message, dated 22 months into the marriage. My mother is right. You will never fit into this family. You lack the breeding. Email from Mr. Ashford to his personal assistant, dated 3 years into the marriage. Cancel my wife's credit card. She needs to learn that access to my money is a privilege, not a right. Each document was placed on the judge's bench like evidence in a criminal trial. Voice message from Mr. Ashford, dated 6 weeks before my daughter requested a divorce. You are nothing without me. You have no skills, no career, no friends who are not my friends. Where exactly do you think you would go? Raymond looked up from the documents. This is not a complete marriage that simply ran its course, Your Honor. This is a systematic campaign of psychological destruction. My daughter was isolated from her professional contacts. Her career was allowed to lapse. Her self-worth was deliberately eroded over 4 years until she believed she had no options, no resources, no hope. He turned to face Marcus directly. You did not just marry my daughter, Mr. Ashford. You dismantled her, piece by piece, year by year, until she was exactly what you wanted. A woman too broken to fight back. The courtroom was absolutely silent. But here is what you did not count on. Raymond's voice hardened. You did not count on the fact that underneath the woman you created, the real Vivian Cole was still there, waiting, documenting, preparing. He pulled out the final folder. And you certainly did not count on this. Your Honor, I would like to submit evidence regarding Mr. Ashford's financial dealings during the marriage, specifically evidence of deliberate asset concealment and potential tax fraud. The blood drained from Marcus's face. What? Raymond spread the documents across the judge's bench with the precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. These records, obtained from Mr. Ashford's private server, document a network of shell companies and offshore accounts that were not disclosed in the financial statements submitted to this court. Properties in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore that do not appear in any public records. Investment accounts under assumed names. A systematic pattern of asset concealment that spans the entire duration of this marriage. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Victor Brennan's voice had lost all its smoothness. These allegations are completely unfounded. Are they? Raymond held up a specific document. This is a wire transfer record from Mr. Ashford's personal account to an offshore entity called Horizon Investments Limited. The amount was $12 million. The date was 3 weeks after my daughter requested a divorce. He held up another document. This is the incorporation record for Horizon Investments Limited. It was created 2 weeks before the wire transfer. The sole director is a law firm in the Cayman Islands that specializes in asset protection for high net worth individuals. And another. This is an email from Mr. Ashford to his personal banker discussing the creation of several similar entities. I quote, "We need to move the liquid assets before the divorce proceedings begin. She cannot take what she cannot find. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus Ashford sat frozen in his chair. His 4 lawyers stared at the documents as if they might spontaneously combust. The gallery was completely still, everyone afraid to breathe. "Your Honor," Raymond's voice was quiet now. "What we have here is not simply a divorce case. What we have here is evidence of financial fraud, potential tax evasion, and deliberate contempt of court through the concealment of marital assets." He looked at Marcus. "I am not a prosecutor, Mr. Ashford. The criminal implications of these documents are outside the scope of these proceedings, but I am certain that the appropriate authorities will be very interested in reviewing this evidence." Marcus turned to Victor Brennan with desperation in his eyes. "Do something." Victor Brennan stared at his client for a long moment. Then he stood slowly. "Your Honor, I request a recess to confer with my client." Judge Hammond shook her head. "We just had a recess, Mr. Brennan, and frankly, I have seen enough." She looked at the documents spread before her. "I am not prepared to rule on all matters today. This case has become significantly more complicated than originally presented. However, I am prepared to make several preliminary findings." She straightened in her chair. "First, regarding the prenuptial agreement. Based on the evidence presented, I find substantial grounds to question the validity of the agreement on grounds of duress. I am ordering a full evidentiary hearing on this matter, but I am inclined to void the agreement entirely." Marcus made a strangled sound. "Second, regarding asset division. Given the evidence of asset concealment presented today, I am ordering a complete, forensic audit of Mr. Ashford's financial holdings. All assets will be frozen pending the completion of this audit. Any attempt to move, transfer, or conceal assets will be treated as contempt of court. Your Honor, that will cripple my client's business operations." Victor Brennan's objection was half-hearted at best. "Then perhaps your client should have been more forthcoming about his assets from the beginning." Judge Hammond's voice was sharp. "This court does not look kindly on parties who attempt to deceive it." Third, regarding the respondent's claims of psychological abuse. I am ordering a full evaluation of the documented pattern of behavior presented today. While not directly relevant to asset division, this evidence may be relevant to claims for compensatory damages. She looked at Marcus directly. "Mr. Ashford, I want to be very clear. The evidence presented today paints a troubling picture. A prenuptial agreement obtained through coercion, systematic psychological abuse, deliberate concealment of assets. Whatever you believed would happen in this courtroom today, I suggest you adjust your expectations." She gathered her papers. "This hearing is adjourned until the forensic audit is complete. I expect both parties to be fully prepared for a complete reassessment of this case at that time." She stood. "Mr. Cole, Miss Cole, I look forward to seeing the rest of your evidence." And with that, she left the bench. The moment the judge was gone, the courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed toward the doors, desperate to file their stories. The society friends who had come to watch Vivian's humiliation were suddenly looking anywhere but at the petitioner's table. Marcus's legal team had surrounded their client, speaking in urgent whispers. And at the respondent's table, Raymond Cole gathered his documents with the same calm efficiency he had displayed throughout the proceedings. "Dad," Vivian's voice was thick with emotion. "Not here." Raymond's voice was quiet. "We will talk outside." They gathered their things and walked toward the doors. But before they could reach them, Marcus Ashford blocked their path. His face was contorted with rage. His expensive suit was disheveled. He looked nothing like the polished billionaire who had entered this courtroom expecting an easy victory. "You planned this." His voice shook. "This whole time, playing the victim, pretending to be helpless, and you had him waiting in the wings." Vivian looked at her ex-husband, the man who had spent 4 years making her feel worthless, the man who had told her she was nothing without him, the man who had believed so completely in his own superiority that he had never bothered to ask who she really was. "I did not need my father to save me, Marcus." Her voice was steady, calm, the voice of a woman who had finally remembered her own strength. "I could have represented myself. I prepared my own case for months. Every document, every transaction, every lie you told." She picked up her briefcase. "Dad did not come here to fight my battles. He came because I asked him to witness this moment, the moment when you finally understand what you threw away." Raymond stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "My daughter was always the most talented attorney in any room she walked into. She did not need my help to beat you, Mr. Ashford. She just wanted you to know who her family is." The family you tried to make her forget. Marcus stared at them, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Vivian leaned closer to him, close enough that only he could hear. You said I was nothing without you. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. Look around, Marcus. Look at what nothing did to you. She stepped past him and walked through the courtroom doors. Raymond followed, leaving Marcus Ashford standing alone in the wreckage of everything he thought he had built. Outside the courthouse, the spring air was crisp and clean. Vivian took a deep breath, feeling something loosen in her chest, something that had been tight for 4 years. How does it feel? Raymond asked quietly. Vivian considered the question. Like waking up from a nightmare I did not know I was having. They walked down the courthouse steps in silence. Behind them, reporters were beginning to gather, shouting questions that neither of them acknowledged. What happens now? Vivian asked. Now, the forensic audit happens. Now, the authorities review the evidence of fraud. Now, Marcus Ashford learns that actions have consequences. Raymond paused. And now, you start rebuilding your life. Vivian looked at her father, the man who had taught her everything she knew about justice, the man who had waited patiently for years, never pushing, never judging, just being there when she finally needed him. Thank you, Dad, for everything. You did the hard work, sweetheart. All I did was show up for the finale. They walked toward the parking lot together, leaving the courthouse behind. If this moment right here, this moment of victory and vindication, is making you feel something, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now telling me what you are feeling. Are you cheering for Vivian? Are you thinking about someone in your own life who underestimated you? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the stories I tell. Now let me tell you what happened next. Because as satisfying as that courtroom scene was, it was only the beginning of Vivian's transformation. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. The forensic audit had revealed even more hidden assets than Raymond's initial evidence had suggested. Marcus had concealed nearly $400 million across various offshore accounts and shell companies. His attempts to hide wealth from the divorce proceedings had also caught the attention of federal investigators, who were now looking into potential tax fraud charges. Victor Brennan had quietly withdrawn from the case after the first hearing. 3 of the junior attorneys had followed. By the end, Marcus was represented by a new legal team that had no illusions about winning. They were there to minimize the damage. The final settlement gave Vivian a fair division of marital assets, not the $200,000 specified in the voided prenuptial agreement, not the nothing Marcus had promised she would receive, but a substantial sum that reflected her actual contributions to the marriage and compensated her for the documented pattern of abuse. But here is the thing. Vivian did not care about the money. She never had. What she cared about was the letter that arrived 2 weeks after the final settlement. The letter from the State Bar Association. Dear Ms. Cole, the letter began. We have reviewed your application for reinstatement and are pleased to inform you that your law license has been restored to active status. Vivian read the letter 3 times. Then she sat down at her small kitchen table and cried, not tears of sadness, tears of reclamation. The woman Marcus Ashford had tried to erase was coming back. 6 months after the divorce, Vivian opened her own law practice. The office was small, a converted storefront in a neighborhood that would never appear in any society magazine. The furniture was secondhand. The sign on the door was simple: Cole and Associates, legal services for those who need them most. It was everything Marcus had told her she could not have, everything he had convinced her she did not deserve, and it was entirely hers. Her first client walked through the door on a Tuesday morning. The woman was young, late 20s, dark circles under her eyes. She moved with the careful posture of someone who had learned to make herself small. I saw the article about your case. The woman's voice was barely above a whisper. About what happened in the courtroom, about your father. Vivian gestured for her to sit. What can I help you with? The woman's hands twisted in her lap. My husband. He is not like your husband. He does not have billions of dollars or fancy lawyers, but he tells me I am nothing without him. He controls all our money. He makes me feel like I cannot survive on my own. She looked up, and there were tears in her eyes. I want to leave, but I do not know how. I cannot afford a lawyer. I cannot afford anything. Vivian leaned forward. What is your name? Rebecca. Rebecca, let me tell you something. 4 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, different details, but the same feeling. The same belief that I was trapped, that I had no options, that I was nothing. She reached across the desk and took the woman's hands. I was wrong, and so are you. I cannot pay you. Let us not worry about that right now. Let us just talk about how to get you free. That conversation lasted 3 hours. By the end of it, Rebecca had a plan, resources, hope, and Vivian had remembered finally and completely who she was. The practice grew slowly but steadily over the next year. Vivian took on cases that other attorneys would not touch, clients who could not pay standard rates, situations that seemed hopeless but were not. She hired a young associate, fresh out of law school, who reminded her of herself at that age. Idealistic, passionate, convinced that justice should not be a luxury item. She established a sliding scale fee structure that allowed anyone to access legal services regardless of their ability to pay. The wealthy clients she did take on helped subsidize the cases that generated no income. And every Friday evening, her father visited. They would order Thai food from the restaurant Vivian had loved since childhood. They would sit at her desk, surrounded by case files, and talk about the law, about justice, about what it meant to fight for people who could not fight for themselves. "You are doing important work," Raymond said one evening, watching his daughter review notes from a particularly complex case. "The kind of work that matters." Vivian set down her papers. "I forgot who I was, Dad. For 4 years, I let someone convince me that I was nothing, that I needed his money and his name to have value. And now I know that I was always enough. Everything I needed, I already had." Raymond reached across the desk and squeezed her hand. "Your mother would be proud of you. I certainly am. I could not have done it without you showing up that day." Raymond shook his head. "You could have. You had everything prepared. You knew his weaknesses. You just needed someone to remind you of your own strength." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, father and daughter, surrounded by the evidence of a life rebuilt from the ground up. 1 year after the divorce, Vivian received an unexpected letter. It arrived by courier in a heavy cream envelope with the Ashford Holdings logo embossed on the back. She almost threw it away unopened. But something made her hesitate. She tore open the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. "Vivian, I have spent the last year watching your career from afar, the cases you have won, the people you have helped, the reputation you have built. I was wrong about you, about everything. I do not expect forgiveness. I am not sure I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see now what I threw away. Not your father's connections or your potential earning power, but you, your passion, your integrity, your heart, for what it is worth. I am sorry. Marcus." Vivian read the letter twice. Then she set it aside. She did not need his apology. She did not need his acknowledgement. Those things might have mattered once, in the early days after the divorce, when she was still healing, still doubting. But now she had clients waiting, cases to prepare, a life to live. She picked up her briefcase and headed for the door. The courthouse was busy that morning. Vivian walked through the familiar corridors, past the room where her own case had been decided, toward the smaller courtroom where her current client was waiting. Rebecca was sitting at the respondent's table. She looked different now, stronger. The dark circles were gone. Her posture had changed. She no longer made herself small. "Are you ready?" Vivian asked, setting down her briefcase. Rebecca nodded. "I think so. Thanks to you. You did the hard work. I just pointed you in the right direction." The bailiff called the court to order. The judge entered, and Vivian Cole, attorney at law, rose to defend another woman who had been told she was nothing. "This is not a story about revenge. I know it might have seemed that way at points. The courtroom confrontation, the evidence that destroyed Marcus's case, the satisfaction of watching a man who had spent years diminishing his wife finally face consequences. But if you only take away the revenge, you are missing the point. This is a story about identity, about what happens when someone systematically tries to erase who you are, about the difference between who others tell you you are and who you actually are, about the courage it takes to remember yourself when everything around you is telling you to forget." Vivian Cole did not win because her father was a legendary attorney. She did not win because Marcus made mistakes that exposed his corruption. She did not even win because justice finally prevailed. She won because she refused to stay lost. For 4 years, she wandered in a maze that Marcus had built for her. a maze of diminishment and isolation and carefully constructed helplessness. He told her she was nothing, and she almost believed it. Almost, because somewhere beneath the woman Marcus had created, the real Vivian Cole was still there, still watching, still documenting, still waiting for the moment when she would remember who she was. That moment came in a dark guest bedroom on the night she discovered her husband's betrayals. It came when she decided that she would rather have nothing and be free than have everything and be his prisoner. And once she made that decision, everything else followed. So, what can we learn from Vivian's story? First, never let anyone define your worth. Marcus spent years telling Vivian she was nothing without him. He pointed to her lack of income, her lapsed career, her dependence on his resources as proof that she had no value independent of what he provided. But worth is not measured in money. It is not measured in social status or professional credentials. Worth is measured in character, in integrity, in the willingness to stand for something even when standing is hard. Second, the people who try to make you small often do it because they fear your potential. Marcus did not diminish Vivian because she was actually worthless. He diminished her because she was brilliant. Because her passion and integrity made his own moral compromises more obvious. Because somewhere, in a part of himself he refused to acknowledge, he knew she was better than him. Third, true strength sometimes means waiting for the right moment. Vivian could have fought back immediately. She could have confronted Marcus at any point during their marriage, demanded her rights, refused to be diminished. But she was not ready. The system he had created around her was too complete, and she had not yet remembered who she was. So she waited. She documented. She prepared. And when the moment came, she was ready. Fourth, family is not just blood. It is who shows up. Raymond Cole showed up for his daughter at the moment she needed him most. Not because she was incapable of winning on her own, but because love means being present. It means witnessing. It means standing beside someone and reminding them of their strength when they have forgotten it. And fifth, it is never too late to reclaim yourself. Vivian spent 4 years lost in a marriage that nearly destroyed her. But she found her way back. She rebuilt her career. She rediscovered her purpose. She became, once again, the woman she had always been meant to be. If you are watching this, and you are in a situation that feels impossible, if someone has spent years making you feel small, if you have forgotten who you were before the diminishment began, I want you to hear this. You are still in there, beneath the doubt and the fear and the voice that tells you you are nothing, beneath the years of being told you are not enough. Beneath all of it, you are still there, and you can find your way back. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength, if it made you think about someone who needs to hear these words, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel right now. We tell stories here that matter. Stories that remind us what we are capable of. Stories that show us what is possible when we refuse to accept the limitations others place on us. Leave a comment telling me your story. Tell me about a time someone underestimated you. Tell me about a time you had to fight to remember who you were. Tell me about the moment you decided you deserved better. I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the stories I tell. Share this video with someone who needs it, someone who is in the middle of their own battle, someone who has forgotten their own strength. Sometimes a story is the first step toward freedom. And hit that like button if you were cheering for Vivian when her father walked through those courtroom doors. Let me know you were with her. Remember this. The people who try to make you small often do it because they are terrified of how big you could become. Do not give them that power. Know your worth. Protect your identity. And when the time comes, reveal your strength on your own terms. Marcus Ashford thought he had married a woman with nothing to offer. He spent 4 years trying to prove he was right. And in one afternoon, in one courtroom, with one father walking through the doors, he learned the most important lesson of his life. Never underestimate anyone. I am Mr. Brad, and I will see you in the next story.